There are two projects involved with account creation. First is the registration project, where users can self-register via a survey and enter whatever project information that the project leads will require. And then after the project leads can review and approve users as they wish and generate a daily account creation report, which is a CSV file exported, and then send that file to the institutional REDCap administrator for creation of the initial REDCap accounts. That's a very self-contained process to do with curation of users and ensuring that they meet all the criteria that you specify before they get allocated to the data collection, which is a separate REDCap project. At that point, the project leads can then assign users to the project and upload the CSV file or manually allocate then users to DAGs. This is just a summary of the three-step process: the separation of concerns between the REDCap users themselves and getting involved in a project, the institutional REDCap administrator, which needs to do a certain amount of housekeeping to manage or maintain accounts for the REDCap database itself or application itself, and then the project leads, which is an individual project owner, and they can basically do whatever they wish within that project at the bottom. The required data fields are simply the first name, last name, and email address. That's to get an account. And the registration project needs to keep track of DAGs, okay, and that's something you can do within your project how you see fit as well. What I typically do is concatenate first name to last name to create an account login name, which is essentially jane.doe as a username. You can do that however you wish. That's a good way of doing it. It makes life easier to manage users. Here's an example of the registration form in the project, and you can see it's just a typical REDCap form which the users can quite capable of filling out themselves. Within that REDCap project, however, you put two data fields to manage whether accounts can be created in the first place, and this is where you can actually approve or not approve. You can call that whatever you like. It's just simply there to manage the flow of who gets to have their request sent through to the second stage of the process, which is to be on that export file. Then once the REDCap project is created, there's another account administration flag here which you can flip that from no to yes, and it won't appear on the report waiting for an account. Here's an example where john.doe is created automatically, and the DAG in the same sort of thing in that database, so that's where you should put your list of DAGs, and those DAGs must correspond to the DAGs you've got in your project, in your research project. Here's an example of the REDCap report which you can generate from within that project. Essentially, one of the fields is a hidden field which you create by concatenating first name and last name. The rest of it is from the database itself, and this field here will be what in this particular project is called hospital, which will be effectively the list of DAGs. The CSV export file, you can export that from the registration database. There's an option on the reporting side which you can export your report. So you generate the report, you create the report, you generate and test your report because you know who hasn't got accounts and who has. You can test the flipping of those flags. And this one here, there's someone who hasn't got an account yet, pops up on the report, and you can export that as a CSV file. The actual account creation CSV file that's exported from that report will have a column for REDCap ID, which you won't need, so you can delete that. Although it's handy to keep that on your intermediate file so you can just keep track of who requested what account. The username that was assigned, the details of the person, and what was in the hospital field, we will actually use that to create the DAG, and you'll notice that's the name of the DAG there. Now, when creating DAGs on your actual research project, you can actually upload the users in bulk, and it needs two important fields here: the username and the field called REDCap Data Access Group. Now you notice that information is on the previous file, but it's not called that yet. So when you want to use this file to go to the DAG file, you basically delete the columns you don't need, which is the ID, first name, last name, email, leave the REDCap ID, REDCap username, but call that username because it's very picky about the names of those columns on the DAG creation template. It doesn't care so much. I think it uses the order of the columns when the REDCap administrator creates accounts, but so the order is what's important here. But what's important on the DAG creation upload is the name of the column. So it wants username and it wants REDCap data access group. That's all you need to upload. Now, if you move on to the data collection project, you'll see that within the project setup, there's a user rights page, tab, and a data access tab. And on the data access tab, you can see there's a link here with your Dropbox. When you click that, you get all these options. This is where you upload the user DAG assignments, which was the file we just saw. If you want to create DAGs in bulk, you can actually upload the DAGs here. And that's another file to create the DAGs initially. That's typically a once-off, and you won't need to do that over and over. So that will be something you don't do routinely. But down here, assigning users to DAGs is something that you'll do every time a batch of new users is created. So that's the end of this part of the demonstration. What I will demonstrate is some of the data files that we've actually got. That's an example of one. Username, you can see that data access group. There's another one here, which just comes straight off the database. Now, one of the things you'll notice is you see the order of the columns matters, but there's a couple of additional fields here like sponsor, which I include that when you create automatic accounts because it groups then these accounts under that sponsor, so it's easier to manage accounts later. And we're using the comments field here to keep track of the actual value of the data field, which will be called the DAG inside the database. So whenever you have a drop-down list, you can actually have the long name, and internally that's saved as the field name, and that's the value to that field. The value for the field is what's internally tracked as the DAG ID. So those IDs there must correspond to the DAGs that you've created on your project database. And then if you notice that, there's the usernames, and these are the DAGs they'll be assigned to. So you notice that rather cryptic name is what you're using each time. You don't really care about the long name or the field name, but when you're creating the DAGs in the first place, you do, because with that's what you'll see on the list of DAGs to select from will be the long name, and internally REDCap manages them with the unique group name or field value, which is what that is there. Now here's a blank REDCap account creation column name. So this is the, like I said, the order matters, but the actual names here it doesn't particularly care about. So you can put what you like in these, and that's why typically we put the DAG value in the comments field there, and the institution ID is usually the long name of the hospital or site, and the expiration we just keep blank normally, but you can actually put a date in there as well. So finally, I'll just bring you up to the actual live database and run through a couple of those points. So this is the POSTVent registration database. You'll see at this point there's a report. You can look at the fields if you like, and I'll actually do that. So I'll go to the status dashboard. We'll go to the last entry on record is our John Doe. So you can see out of all the data fields that are possible, there's only a few that are required to create accounts. The rest of it, it's up to you. This is where the DAGs are generated from this list, and this is the long name. So that's the field name, and internally there's a cryptic name which is stored in the database. So that's all the DAGs in this particular project. You see there's a lot of them, and you can collect anything else that you wish at this point. Now the important thing here is the flag here, that they need a REDCap ID, REDCap account. That's something that's optional, but it's important if you want to use that. And that's basically what the users enter themselves. This is all user stuff. So you don't need to worry about any data entry at that point, because that's a survey sent to users. Attached to that user will be an admin screen, where then somebody, a site administrator, can approve whether that user should have access. You can collect anything that additional that you want to collect at this point. And the important part here is the account created? Yes. And if that's no, they'll appear on the report. This is the username that's generated from a hidden field, which is a concatenation of the first name and last name. And the REDCap DAG effectively is pulled. Essentially, that's also generated from the list of DAGs on the registration form. So I know the site name is Fiona Stanley Hospital. Typically, you make that as complete. Once the account's made up, you come back here, flick that over to yes, I've got an account, and so that form's complete. On the reports, on this side, you can see there's a creation template which has been created. That pulls up anybody that is approved to have an account and the account has not been created yet. That's the information which is exported with that flag here. So you can just simply export it as a CSV file, and that comes down to your computer, and you can send that off to the institutional REDCap administrator requesting those accounts be created. Now, when you have confirmation that the accounts have been created, you can actually then move over to the data collection project. And there's one thorny task you need to do at this point, which is to add the users to the project. So when you come in here, you have to then, from this, click that, find the user on the list and assign them to one of the roles. Typically the roles are data collection. There's lots of roles here, but the best is the biggest one is the data collection role, which is all these users here. That's effectively the main role for all those users. Now, when you're assigning those users, so into the project now, we can go to data access groups. And this is the option to upload those in bulk. So you've got the new users, you've got the new users DAG, and you can upload those. At the moment, that is very slow. It could be slow because the server's under a bit of load. I'll investigate that later. But the other problem is that this is getting very big now. Okay, and the way REDCap is actually designed and written, it's not very efficient in loading up massive amounts of drop boxes and groups and so on. So there'll be a natural practical limit as to what you can sensibly do with the number of user accounts and number of people in DAGs and number of DAGs. But this is the upload by user DAG assignments. That file I was talking about, that's where you upload that file. You select the file from your hard drive or wherever, and you can navigate your hard drive, find it, and then upload, and that will automatically assign all the users to the DAGs. And that's essentially the process. So I'll leave it at that, because I think that's covered just about everything you need to know about automatically managing accounts.